Hey guys, John here. So after making Retro Waves 1 and 2, the next thing to make is retro drums. Here's a little demo of the sounds that come in the pack. Alright, so everything that you heard comes in this pack, except the bass arp, which is in Retro Waves 2, but let's get into these sounds here and kind of see what we have to go through. And as you can see here, it's 25 presets. Normally I usually do 20, but I thought might as well throw in some extra 5 sounds in there. So to get in this here, let's turn off our bus force and give us a little extra volume, and let's go through the things here. So the first one is going to be glass rhythm. So that's kind of the little higher pitched things you heard in the once the beat drops, as they say. So here we go. And most of these packs work with any button that you or any key that you press. It's going to be generally the same thing. It's not really going to change pitch, with exception to a couple of them. So with this one, we have a tone macro. We also have phase. So that one can be fun to automate. So this one is built off a lot of these delays, as you can hear. They kind of go back and forth and back and forth. I put those on a macro just in case those are a little bit too much. We can always dial those back or turn them off. And then the last macro is going to be reverb. And while we're talking about reverb, most of these here do have their own reverb that come with them. However, if you are arranging something or making some kind of track, I do recommend to use your own reverb. That way everything just kind of sounds a little bit more cohesive. You can kind of dial things in a little bit better. So most of these are going to be on a macro. If you don't really want that, you can always add it to it. But yeah, it's really up to you. So next up, we have a hi-hat. And this one's actually pretty versatile. So we have the first one is tone. Depending on if we want a really bright hi-hat, a low hi-hat, kind of whatever you want to do. And also a decay. So this is kind of cool. And this is kind of what I automated a little bit before. So we can have this all the way to the left. And we have just a really short burst, you know, if the hi-hat's closed and the drummer's kind of just hitting the sticks on the hi-hat. And then if he opens up his foot, then we get something kind of like that. So you can kind of, obviously with much more accurate automation on that, but that's what that knob is there for. And then we have some overtone. Kind of gives a little bit more metallic-y sound on the top end. And mixing these two with a combination of the noise and the metallic sound, you get a pretty nice sounding hi-hat. And then, as before, we have reverb on the fourth macro. So if you want to put your own, just put this to the left and add your own to taste. Next up, we have one of our first kicks called Punchy. And it's one of those punchy kicks here. And these are kind of versatile too, because I've put the macros of the fundamental and the noise. So if you want a little bit more of that attack sound, then you're going to want to reach for this noise. Or if you want less, maybe just have the fundamental. Or if you want less fundamental, you can have something like that. Kind of mix it to taste. And then we have a little bit of noise tone to kind of dial in that attack for the kick drum, and then we can tune this here a little bit as well. Depending on how high pitched or low pitched we want that kick to be. The next one is going to be called Kick 2 Snappy. And this is more so kind of that drum machine kind of sound here. And the same concepts apply to here. We have the fundamental and the noise. And the third macro is actually going to be tune. Kind of what we had before. But this one's really cool as well because we have a decay. So if we want a really short kick, a little kind of a burst, or a longer drawn out kick. Something kind of like that. Next up, we have a couple of cymbals here. They're metallic sounds here. So we have metallic cymbal 1. And we can change the tone. And then we have lows and highs. So here's the highs, pushing this up here. Almost that metallic-y higher end there, and then the lows. Depending on how you want to mix that. And then reverb again as well on macro number 4. And then we have a metallic cymbal number 2. And the same kind of concept applies here with the decay, depending on how long you want the cymbals to ring out. That's where you'd adjust this knob accordingly or do some automation or something like that. And then we have tone. Then we have tone low. And then our effects. Next up, we have a metallic ting. Now, this is kind of more so like one of those kind of extra accenty sounds that you would kind of just sprinkle through the mix, right? Maybe pan these left or right or something like that, or automate them. But yeah, so this is metallic ting 1. And here's some overtones. And then we have metallic ting 2. Okay, so now we're going to get into some really cool stuff here. So these are going to be the perk loops. So I've made 6 of them, and it's basically what you heard in the beginning. So this first kind of rhythmic thing here. So let's put back our bus fours and kind of take a listen again. So that's going to be those perk loops there. So what's really cool about those things is that you can kind of make a drum groove out of the drums themselves and kind of just hold down a note, and those things will just make that groove for you underneath the drums. And we have 6 of them. So the first one, we have this guy here, and then this is the second one, which is what you heard before. Now with these loops here, there is a little bit of melodic elements to them. So if we play something higher up, or something lower. So let's go back to the first one and kind of check out some of these macros here. So we have a tone. Something kind of good to automate. And then we have a high pass. And this is kind of useful too. Let's say you already have like a really heavy drum groove and there's maybe a bass in there, and then the low end of this is kind of clashing. Then you can kind of just filter this out with the high pass right over here. And then we have the delay. And then some reverb here. The next one here, the first one that we heard in the beginning of the track. So we have a noise level for the first one. And then the pluck level. And it's kind of built on both of these layers. So here's just the noise groove. And this one here is not necessarily meant to be melodic at all. It's just more rhythmic, but the pluck level should be. So depending on what you want to do, just keep in mind that if you do have this pluck level in there, you kind of do want to play something that actually matches your track. So maybe the root note or the fifth or something like that. That would work just as fine. And then we have reverb and then effects as well. The third one here is going to be interesting as well. So we have a cutoff for the first one. We have resonance. And I decided to put a sub on the macro. So this one's kind of interesting too, because let's say you want a sub in the beginning, and then once the beat kind of kicks in, then you can kind of just automate this out. And you still have that kind of groove. So if we were to kind of remove this here and kind of play this something kind of like... So let's turn this up here a little bit. So that's kind of why we want to play something in time and also with the melodic element as well. So next we have perk 4. And then we have 2 cutoffs for this one. We have 1 and 2. So the first one here. And then the second. And then we have some feedback here, which is going to be interesting. So with the drum group in context, Those are a lot of fun to play with. And then we have Perc Loop 5. Let's turn this guy down just a little bit here. And in context. So this one's kind of fun because we have a whoa knob. So this is kind of interesting. Let's turn this down just a bit here. So we have the whoa. And then let's get wet because I figured I'd lose the naming convention that I normally do. So I was like, whatever, it sounds wet, so let's get wet. And then we have a nice dirty sub, which is actually the low oscillator going through the filters and the effects, kind of getting that distortion in there, as opposed to going just direct out. I can see your license plate rattling at the stoplight already. Okay, last but not least of the perks, we have perk 6, and this one's probably one of my favorites aside from the second one. This one's kind of cool as well, so take a listen to this guy. It's funky, it's mean, it's dirty, and it's just all that nastiness in one. So let's take a listen to this. I believe I have it on this guy. I think it was this one here. Yeah. So yeah, that is the 6th one here. So we have the cutoff. And then some high pass in case you don't want all the low end there. And then the phase mod, which makes it kind of really cool sounding. Kind of really brings out the melodic character to it as well. Okay, next up we have the DR Fat. It kind of looks like Dr. Fat 808. That's actually kind of funny. And it sounds like this. So this one's cool because we have some different controls here. So we have the decay. So if you want a longer decay, we can crank this up here. And then the pitch decay as well. I kind of wanted to put these on a separate thing, depending on how you want it to sound. So we can have a longer pitch decay. Or long pitch decay and a short envelope. And then the distortion here. If you want to kind of clean. And then this multi-band oomph kind of makes it just a little bit more nasty here. And keep in mind here, so while we're on this Dr. Fat 808 here, so the main pitch dive is going to be in the wavetable here on this knob over here. So right now it is going to be manually set at 45.2 hertz. So keep in mind, depending on the key of your song, you might want to look at the root note of your song, whatever key it is. Let's say it's in G or F or whatever it is. Find out what that is in frequency or in hertz, so then you can dial this here accordingly so it'll be in tune. And if it's a little bit too low and it kind of doesn't really work, what you can also do as an alternative is find out what the fifth is in the scale and find out the hertz value for that, and then type it in, but actually like turn the knob here. And you can always right click and move the knob to make it find little adjustments there, and then it should be in tune for your song. So moving on from there, we have some drums here. So we have the first tom, and these are these cheesy toms, right? And it's kind of similar to the other kick drum, right? We have the fundamental and the noise, so hopefully that should make sense now. But I also wanted to put a decay on it, right? So if we want really short decays, we can do that, or the kind of really long cheesy ones. And then we have quite a few of these here. So I did a high, a medium, a low, and a low, low, just to kind of have the whole kit in one pack here. So it's make it a little bit more cohesive, right? So here's medium, high, medium, low, and then low, low. So yeah, you do a nice little drum roll with those and kind of dial in how you want these here to sound. Do some nice panning to the toms, and you're going to have a very cheesy track, which sounds kind of cool nowadays. So next up, we have Snare Retro 1. And then we have kind of the same thing before. We have the fundamental and the noise, and then the decay as well. And here we kind of hear that almost that snare fundamental kind of ringing out a little bit there. And we can have it nice and snappy here if you want to. This might be something kind of cool that you could put an external gated reverb on. That would sound actually pretty awesome for that. And the next one up, we have snare to noise. Now, this is kind of more so made from those really old snares where it's kind of just like a burst of white noise, right? But there's a little bit more involved here. So I have 3 macros here for noise 1, 2, and 3, and they're kind of all mixed in different ways to kind of get that timbre, right? So we have something like that here. So here's the first noise. Here's the second noise. And the third. So if we're all going to put all these down, here's the first noise. Here's the second. And then the third. And kind of just mixed accordingly. This is also pretty cool for a gated reverb as well. It kind of really gives off that retro vibe. And some of the couple things down here. So this is called the rattlesnake. Now these are kind of more so like percussive, really kind of just interesting stuff to sprinkle through the mix, like I was saying before. And we can change the tone here. Or resonance. So you can do a lot of interesting rhythmic stuff with these by automating some of these macros here. Yeah, the creativity is all up to you. Next, we have the wow, which, you know, sometimes you run out of names to label macros and you just write wow. Wow, right? So normally if we're down here, right, we have these delays. And this throws the delays off quite a bit. So yeah, that can be a lot of fun to play around with in the mix here. Next up, we have the Rattlesnake 2, which is kind of based off the same concept, just a little bit different. And adding these things inside to the tracks can really kind of bring them out to life. Maybe put one in the left speaker or the right speaker, maybe automate them left to right or something like that. Just really just give like a big soundscape. And last but not least, I decided to just include a weird FX Nightmare Riser that just sounded kind of weird making this pack. And I was like, you know what, might as well include it because it's kind of cool. So here it is. It kind of almost reminds me of like you're kind of becoming aware of something, but it's not really a good thing that you're becoming aware of this. And yeah, that is what that sounds like. We have some nice cutoff here in case we want to darken it up a little bit. And then they sub here as well, which is side chained to the volume. So we could have this riser still come up and not have a sub in here if we don't want to. Or we can have a sub and rattle your license plate. Now there is a hefty amount of distortion on this as well, which is why I decided to keep it on Macro 3 as opposed to lumping it in with the effects. So yeah, if you wanted to have that distortion make it a little bit more nasty, put some hair on it, then maybe you want to crank this up all the way. And then the effects are basically the effects here. But yeah, that is the Retro Drums preset pack. There's 25 presets inside this one here, so I believe you're going to have a lot of good luck with this one here. There's a lot of cool stuff to go through. If you do have Retro Waves 1 and 2, then these will pretty much just fit in kind of nicely, kind of like Lego pieces or puzzle pieces that are not 1,000 pieces long. But anyway, so with that being said, let's kind of play this out here with the Retro Drums. I always keep trying to say Retro Waves here. I think it was 2 that I had on. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so without further ado, if you want to get this pack, there's a link in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Thanks. Thanks for watching.